Good afternoon. This is a special ed PLC grade level meeting that will be facilitated by our curriculum coordinator, Ms. Marlise McCarthy.
All right, guys. Welcome. Ms. Kennison, the purpose of today's PLC is by the end of PLC, you will become familiar with aligning curriculum within and across grade levels. Now, today I thought that this video would be important for you and Ms. Strauss to watch because I know we have an issue with incorporating what the children need and y'all wanting to hit what they're teaching. So we're going to look at a video from the teachingchannel.org that talks about aligning the curriculum within a special ed class. So the video we're going to watch today is special ed. Come on in, Ms. Charles. All right. So, Ms. Charles, I was just telling Ms. Kennison that today we're going to look at a video about aligning curriculum within and across grade levels. So right now we're going to take about an 11-minute virtual field trip. And the title of this video is called Aligning Curriculum Within and Across Grade Levels.
Now what the state?
I'm not sure, but I can, once we finish watching it, I can tell you that, because it might, okay, hold on just a second, let me get it up. Let's see, Ms. Kennison, if I can find out what state they're in. Teacher and school information, they're in Vancouver, Washington. In their school, they have a population of 1,044 students. Now, this is a middle school, but we're just gonna see, how they're aligning their curriculum.
In order for us to be a complete K-8 system, or even for us to be a complete middle school system, we need to know what happens at each level. When we know what happens at each level, it kind of tells us where we need to get the kids at the end of the year. By the end of the year, kids need to be here, 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 and here. And they need to be able to do these things in order to be successful at the next level. And I think that by aligning your curriculum and by the teachers coming together and sharing and making sure they're on the same page in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, it ensures that you start putting the kids first and you start putting the standards first rather than the curriculum coming first.
But then when they get to 7th grade, note-taking procedure without being prompted. So hopefully we'll get them there. That's going to be one of their outs. And then 8th grade, all 3 levels of questioning to use. Okay, so.
And having to do the citations.
Right.
And I guess we'll see that with our curriculum map when they're supposed to effectively use their notes with text to increase understanding and retention.
We started out in looking at how do you align curriculum. One of the first ideas that the PLT came up with was creating curriculum maps. And so we did some research and started looking into what goes into curriculum maps. And we provided opportunities for teachers to sit down and write curriculum maps. Really map out what they were going to do for the year.
And it's not just doing the same thing, but expecting the same thing out of the students, the same quality of work. What makes a good essay? What's the standards for 6th grade? What should we be expecting from them for any of their work?
Those were some really hard dialogues. And they had some fairly serious arguments, if you will, about what's important. But what that does is it starts to clear the air, number one, and it really starts to force you to look at what the student needs.
I guess it's kind of going back to what is the district wants? What does the state want? What are they expecting kids to do? Because we know in 7th grade they have to write expository and persuasive writing for the state test. So we're like, well, okay, well, we didn't do persuasive before, but now we need to start preparing these kids so that they've at least been exposed to it, so that when they get to 7th grade, it's not just completely. So it was a lot of, looking at the expectations and then looking at the students when they're coming in to us every year. You give them that assessment, where are this bunch of kids at, and where do we need to go with them? And then tweaking that curriculum map every year if it needs to be, because the kids need something different.
Aligning 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, just sitting down and asking, where do we want our kids to leave from? What skills do we want them to have before they move on? And then how can we take that down and introduce a little bit at each grade level? How can we make sure these students are having the common expectations in their other classes? And when they go to 8th grade, it's not like, well, we've never seen Cornell Notes before. How come this is being thrown at us? But now they're getting it in 6th grade.
How are we gonna know what kids should be learning at the grade levels? And somebody on the PLT said, well, how about we do 5 ins and outs? But we said, okay, what are the 5 things that you want kids to know coming into your grade level in language arts? What are the 5 things you're going to teach them, or you're going to have them to where they're capable of doing it, even? And so they all did that, and they said, now come together and share those.
Okay, so today we started Cornell Notes, or we were all working on Cornell Notes, which is part of one of our outs, one of our.
Sorry, y'all. It's buffering.
Outs for this year for kids, and part of our curriculum map.
Then, kind of in the midst of all that, we've been doing that for a year. The district came out and said, we're going to take the standards at the state and we're going to modify them and look at them and find them so that they're more useful at the schools. That really fit in with the ins and outs because we found they were very similar. We found that we were closely aligned across our grade levels. It's kind of an ongoing process for them, I think. As they get into it and they find where kids struggle, now it's kind of help them determine what their lesson's going to.
I'm gonna stop the video right here because we're having some buffering issues. But basically what they talked about is what I wanted us to have some discussion about in PLC today. In this video, I know it talked a lot about regular ed, and this was middle school.
Cause I didn't hear special ed at all.
But when, like as he was talking about the ins and outs, that's how they were talking about. Remember he talked about modifying the curriculum?
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things we know from, what we just saw in the video, he said that is we need to know what happens in each grade level. The good thing is, once y'all get your IEPs for the next year, you know where that child is. So we look at the IEP goals, and that's kind of tying it into 5 ins and outs. Because how many goals and objectives do you normally have on a IEP?
About 3.
About 3?
Yeah, 'cause you have like ELA and then math.
Now, what I was thinking when he was talking was about the ins and outs, and he said, now this is middle school. So when they look at their curriculum, like for their 6th grade math, they won't have as many standards as we have in a grade level. But the good thing about it is what the district has done for us already is we have our color-coded standards. They're green, blue, and yellow. Green are the focus standards. They have to be able to know and do those standards by the time they leave their grade level. The blue ones are supporting standards and the yellow are additional standards. So we know for sure that the green standards, and we even have it broken down for us for the park assessment, you know, how many items they will see coming from these standards. But what I was thinking when I was looking at that video was, from a special ed standpoint, is looking at our IEPs early enough, so when these students come in, okay, if they're on a second grade level, then we need to know what's expected for them in second grade. So, but, and I know special ed is a little special, well, it's a lot special, because I mean, y'all, a lot more is expected from y'all than from regular ed teachers. So you have this 5th grade child that's sitting in your resource class or in your self-contained class, but they're on the second grade level. Now, y'all situations are totally different, because Ms. Kennison is resource, she has them for a while, and they're gonna go back to their teacher. But Ms. Charles, it's how do you have a 5th grade child, teach him on this level, but still expose him to the 5th grade standards? And that's where that curriculum alignment that we see, we gave it to our parents at past night, the first one, but that's when we get to see the progressions, to know, okay, if they're on the second grade level, what can I do to try to expose them to some of the 5th grade content? Because unfortunately, those students, even though at a second grade level, they still won't go to middle school. So I think that's why, for us here at Conbury, we're kind of ahead of the game, because we are already meeting vertically. But I know next year, once we, you know, do the reconfiguration, it's going to be important for y'all to sit in on these vertical team meetings so you can kind of hear what's going on in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. He was talking about the curriculum mapping. The good thing is, a lot of that stuff is already being done for us. We're waiting for them to put the scope and sequence out for K through 5 for math right now. I don't know what they're doing with ELA, but I know math is coming soon, because they're going to have to bring that to the in-service on next Friday. But like he talked about establishing those expectations at the beginning of the year. So if you get this 5th grade child, Ms. Kennison, in your resource class, based on his IEP and from you, those ins and outs, what are, you know, 5 things that he can do coming in, but 5 things you want him to do coming out. If it's I want him to be able to write an essay with 3 paragraphs. Yeah, he's low, but that's what y'all want to build on for the year. Same thing for Ms. Charles. Ms. Charles, you know, you get a child in there like a Jarrell, you know, who's that lower level child. But, you know, I think if we just like hone in on 5 things that we want them to do, we won't be all over the place. Because right now, I think, just from talking in last PLC, where you talked about Ms. Kennison, you know, how I'm going to teach them what they learned in 5th grade, and, you know, resource, that's not your concern. Now, when we talk about Ms. Charles, who is a self-contained teacher, now that's a different ballgame. Because she's yeah, go ahead.
Like resource, I thought like resource would be, they come in and they get the help that they need on their level. I guess I forget about the level.
See, that's the most important part of resource, is they're getting that. So, see, when a child is in self-contained special ed, Ms. Charles is the person that's responsible for teaching them on their level and teaching them on the level where they should be. Well, not teaching them, but exposing them to the content. You're a safe place for the children. When they sit in their classroom all day long, they're frustrated. They can't do that. You know, most of them, I mean, they 2 and 3 grade levels behind, but when they come to you, that's where they are able to be successful. Because what you're going to be teaching them is things that are on their level. Now, can you move them up faster? Of course you can, because if you know that they can't divide. Well, 9 times out of 10, they can't divide because they can't multiply. Well, you as the resource teacher, you dig deeper to see, well, why can't they multiply? Well, they probably don't have an understanding of base 10. They don't know addition and subtraction facts. So, you know, they're struggling. So you work with them to get them proficient with addition and subtraction, and like you have a laser-like focus on their deficiencies. Then maybe you can introduce them to multiplication, but you are that kind of like the bucket filler. You're the gap filler. That's what you do. So, what else you want to add to that, Ms. Kennison or Ms. Charlotte?
So I get them, I started their level and bring them up to the 5th grade.
And you may not get there because, you know, in our district, what they only want to see is at least 1 year's growth. So next year, you may have an SLT. You know, you started kind of late, but Ms. Kennison has one, and we're gonna talk about that next, but I'm gonna just kind of jump into that part. Ms. Kennison, let's give Ms. Kennison a round of applause. Ms. Kennison met, she met both of her SLTs with exceptional attainment. That's a 4, that's the highest on the rubric that she could get. Well, looking at Ms. Kennison's data, and I'm gonna just, I know she doesn't mind me sharing her data, because it looks really good. Now, some of her children came off, like Davy went to you, and Kyle and Kyla, they left Conbury. But let's talk about a child that grew. Let's talk about Gennaro, for instance. Gennaro, on the Scantron Performance Series test, scored a 14. Well, the only thing the district was asking is that by the end of the school year, he would score at least a 24. Well, Gennaro went there and scored a 71. So he showed an 80% increase from pre to post test. For a special ed child, that's great. Now, does that mean that Gennaro is now on a 5th grade level? No. Gennaro may still be, and I think I had some of her, and I'll put it in the trash, Miss Kennison. Because I gave you the copies already. I can use Gennaro. Now, Gennaro scored, this is math. Okay, this is ELA, so let me go to ELA. Okay. Okay, what's this stuff? Okay, never mind, this was the, no.
They can do it, they just need that extra
Motivation,
little, He was doing some good things even.
Okay, yes, so here's Gennaro. So Gennaro actually had a 56% increase because his pre-test math score was a 16. Well, when we tested him on May 5th, his overall SIP was a 36. So that means he increased by 56% in math. Now, is he on grade level? No, because according to this one data point, which is not the end-all be-all, he's still below average. He's still in the red. So for his classroom teacher, she's concerned. But he is a resource student, so this is tremendous gain for him. Because according to this just one data point, and remember, like I keep telling y'all, that one data point is not the end-all be-all. His performance on the test that day had a grade level equivalency of a 4th grade, 3rd month student. Now, if Gennaro was a 2nd grade, he made some tremendous gain this year. So, and then when you get this report, Ms. Kennison, it tells you right here, like top 3 suggested learning objectives, things that if he would really master these standards, he would do even better. Now, one of these standards is a 2nd grade standard. It's a 2nd grade geometry standard because obviously he scored low in that area, where the learner will identify various geometric figures. So you know, if you have like Gennaro next year, this is some good data for you to use to determine his goals for the year. But I know he'll be gone, but we're going to have this data on every student in the school. Every student in the district will have this data. So it tells us, again, like another 3rd grade standard. He's struggling with rounding to the nearest 1,000. And I told you, 9 times out of 10, if they can't divide, if they don't have multiplication, let's dig deeper. And I bet you, any kind of money, it's a lack of base 10 understanding, which is the foundation to everything, because all roads eventually will lead to algebra. And then another one was for him to be able to explore equivalent fractions, because we know he got 5th grade content on that test. He got 4th grade content, and fractions are huge in 5th grade. But where do they get that basic understanding from? They get it in 3rd grade. Well, we know he's missing it because when he came to you, he probably was on a 2nd or a 3rd grade level, and supposed to, and he in the 5th grade.
So do you have one with the green?
Do I have one with the green? Let's see.
Yeah.
We do have Daryl with a low average and Shalacia. Now, Shalacia is a 3rd grade student, and everybody else was red for math. But it's okay, they still show growth. And like for your special ed students, I mean, that's phenomenal. And that performance is based on national averages. So with Shalacia came in math. Shalacia scored 46. Her post-test SIP was a 67. Shalacia showed 31% gain, which is great. But she is a 3rd grade student, but according to this one data point, Shalacia is at a 3rd grade 9th month. So she should be, at the end of 3rd grade, she should be at least 4th grade 1st or 2nd month, but that's okay. That's okay for a resource student. Now, like I said, if this was my regular ed class as a regular ed teacher, I would be a little concerned about these yellow and red kids. But as a resource teacher, you don't need to be.
Can you do, Shannon's, you know, the
You really didn't have one of those?
No, but we can test your radar.
Okay.
We can test your radar so you can have this data. But because Ms. Charles was gone, the first Ms. Charles, and she didn't have an SLT anymore, we didn't test those students. But we can test Jarrell and Sean, but we would probably won't test Asia, because we have Dibble's data on Asia. Well, Shannon is below average. Shannon scored a 9 on the pre-test. On the post-test, he scored a 28, which was a 68% gain, which is great for Shannon. Now, Shannon is 4th grade, but according to this, for reading, he's at a 2nd grade 6-month level. But that's growth for Shannon.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah.
it tells us what Shannon needs to work on. The learner will solve story problems involving adding up to 3 whole numbers, which is a 4th grade standard. But okay, why do you think Shannon is struggling with solving story problems? Anybody? He's a struggling reader. And I don't have these printed for you for ELA yet, but I can almost promise you when I pull ELA, he's gonna be the less than sign, he's gonna be below 2nd grade. And we know that. We know that for Shannon. Another one, it says he needs to work on finding the perimeter of a figure with sides labeled. Well, I'm pretty sure perimeter is something far above, you know, what Shannon is even thinking about right now, and he will learn to order fractions. So we know what he's struggling with. But anybody that is at a 2nd grade, 6-month level, they will never see these things in 2nd grade. And that's the level that he's at. So it kind of gives you, okay, I'm gonna work with Shannon on, like next year when you have him for resource, when you get him for math, I'm gonna expose him to word problems. They may be on a 2nd grade 6-month level or a beginning 3rd grade level, but they're gonna have to be word problems.
But we did word.
Yeah. And just constantly. And when we look at ELA, seeing what kind of strategies you could use for Shannon to help him to be able to try to decipher these on his own. Now, he has these accommodations that he's gonna get test read aloud anyway. But that is, for me, what I'm seeing, and I know Mr. Clement can vouch for that, but what we're seeing as we go around in the classrooms, these children are not getting their accommodations in their regular ed classroom. Now, if they would even assign them like a buddy, because when they're working on independent work, nobody's reading stuff to them. What would they do? Because I see F's, 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 F's. But what would these children do if they are actually receiving their accommodations in class?
But can't they, if they say your child is receiving Fs, and they have accommodations, and those parents start complaining, they can do something about that, right?
Yes, ma'am. Now, we have brought this issue to Ms. Smith, you know, already. And I know, you know, being a new principal coming in mid-year, it was hard for her to, you know, get to every issue. Because y'all know we even had our own issues in special ed. But I know for a fact that that's one of the main issues, is that those fed children are not receiving their account, even for a test.
What about the 504 students? Because was Marcus a 504 student?
Marcus was about.
And that's always been a problem, even when I was teaching in Texas, it's like, and I was always a regular education teacher, but I did modify. But it seems like those teachers don't wanna do it.
They don't wanna do it. Mr. Clement and I found something that really worked great for us. Now, I had 8 resource children. My last year in the classroom, I had 8 resource children. Everybody had a buddy. So when we rarely did independent work where the children had to sit down and work by themselves. But if they did, they had somebody in their group that sat right at their shoulder that read to them. That was just automatic.
If my mama had the basil with the spelling words.
They had a modified list.
20,
They had
have
10.
Yeah, that's
You know, we
always
modified, and you know, what we found with our students was that they were able to take our test without our test being modified. Now, we did give them the option on our reading comprehension test to only answer one constructive response. But the expectation was still there for them that you are going to answer a constructive response question, but I only want you to answer 1 instead of 30. And you get to choose one. But y'all, we did see, and Ms. Kennison, that's gonna be something we're gonna have to really work on for next year, because those teachers are gonna have to get them children their accommodations in class. Because even when we used to give tests, we recorded the questions on our iPad in our recorder, and the children would come with the headphones, and they can, if they needed to press question number 1 10 times, then that's repeated, like, they can get it as many times as they wanted, and y'all, our children did so much better. Because it's hard to give, and we tell these teachers that, it's hard to give a test read aloud while everybody else testing, because they listening, they're listening. But don't do that. It's gonna take you about 15 minutes of your time to record it, but you're gonna have to record it in your iPad, or pull them out, or you're gonna have to do something, because y'all, these children, and I really think that's why our special ed children are not growing grade level wise, because like they should, because they're not getting their accommodations in the class. Because Ms. Kennison, like, they have almost every child has a calculator. Those children for the test didn't have a clue how to use the calculator. Oh yeah, Jarrell know how to use that calculator. Yeah. It is? Yeah, because he had, yeah. So Ms. Kennison, like, when you work in math, even though you're gonna teach them the conceptual part of regrouping, give them that calculator, because that's still their accommodation. And while you're teaching them conceptually what's going on when we regroup, teach them how to put it in that calculator, because that is an accommodation.
To check their work, or just to check themselves.
But, we see that they're not getting it in class, because with the onset of Park says no calculator. Well, the teachers don't even pull out calculators anymore. So if they're not pulling them out for their regular ed students, they're not pulling them out for the special ed students either. Back when we were in the classroom in the elite world, we had half of the test calculator, half of the test non-calculator. So it was to our advantage to teach everybody how to use a calculator.
So are they gonna be highlighting, like for the Park test, you highlight?
Yeah, they
don't teach them how to
If
highlight.
you don't teach them how to highlight,
all
they
day long.
Exactly. They won't do it. They won't even know. They'll just start creating, Picasso's on the test, That's just what they'll do. So, hats off to you again, Ms. Kennison, for doing such a great job with your students, because, the proof is in the data. It's there. So, awesome job. So that kind of
Can
brings...
you repeat that again? I didn't
Yes,
hear
ma'am.
that.
Ms. Kennison is at exceptional attainment of her math and ELA SLT.
And she gonna be announcing it in the church.
Based on her children's performance series data. So, so that was kind of, we kind of covered both of those bullets with performance series data. But when we were talking about Ms. Smith, and you walked in at a good time too, because Ms. Kennison's concern is for you. But what we were talking about was an issue that me and Clement are seeing across the campus, is that in these special ed classes, the children are getting their accommodations. So we're not seeing, like, okay, I'm gonna just use this child for instance. Shannon scored a 9 at the beginning of the year on performance series for math. Now he's at a 28. So he has made a 68% gain.
Right.
But he's still at a second grade 6 month level, but that's okay. But I told Ms. Kennison, as a resource teacher, that's something to celebrate. But as a regular ed teacher, I'm nervous.
Right.
But those children can't use calculators, and they have the accommodation to use calculators. And what would they really do in their class if they were getting their accommodations?
So that's one of the things that we need to make sure that we're on next year.
Is making sure
that that they're meeting the children's needs.
Because a lot of parents don't understand, especially just like I was talking to Jarrell's grandmother today. With me being a teacher and knowing what I know, if my child was in special ed, and like my daughter was ADHD in school, and she had accommodation and she come home with an F, I want to know why she failing.
Right.
And that's true. I totally agree with you, Ms. Charles, because Clement and I would give 4th grade words, but we cut off and we looked, Clement and I every week would look at that spelling list. We had 20 or 25 words. 20 words. What 10 words were these children use the most?
Right.
And then we pulled out and we gave them a 10-word list. We could even, in Spelling City, we could make their games based on a 10-word list. Well, Ms. Kennison, you remember, because you had our children. And they would make A's on their spelling test, and we wouldn't have. Now, granted, we get those children 20 words. I mean, if their accommodations is asking for modified work, modified tests, gotta modify everything.
Right. So, that might be something that we can do, as a faculty, have, PD. Or just have somebody come in and just explain what it is that's required.
Yeah, because you know, like we were talking, when they see those special ed children with all these Fs,
Yeah, that sends up a red flag.
And then as you progress, because, you know, we had ones, you know, oh, but why we don't get 20 words, you know.
they used to want 20
Yeah, they
words.
used to want, but you know, to increase them, you know, hey, this week you might get 12, you know, just, you know,
And
just to
some, and we would
challenge
give it to them, but we wouldn't test them on it.
Yeah.
Because we know legally, from that IEP standpoint, it's a modified. So we wouldn't test them on it, but, I mean, they knew how to do it. Because it's all about setting high expectations. They want to fit in. Just like like I told you with the test, with our selection test. They had 3 constructive response questions on every reading test. But they only had to answer 1. But some of them wanted to answer all 3. Hey, if you want to answer all 3, that's fine. And I'll give you the credit for the best one. But you know, we weren't going to grade it, but we only required them to do 1. But once you set those high expectations, they're going to rise up to it. Now, Ms. Kennison, you had a question before we started PLC.
I forgot that question.
No, you said you wanted to know how was the setup for special ed next year.
Yeah.
So Ms. Smith came in at a
So
good time.
What are we gonna have?
Well, the one thing that I can tell you, Ms. Kennison, is that you will have a para.
Get out of here.
Yes, we have been approved for 2 paras, one for the self-contained class and then one for resource. So y'all have to share,
Oh, okay.
but you will have a para. You will have a para. Probably not, because my question to Ms. LeBlanc yesterday was, would I get a chance to choose our para? And she said, unfortunately, I'm not able to choose the para.
But they're
Oh,
gonna,
like, I just thought maybe you could keep somebody who's
resource will
already.
share.
Yeah, I am gonna keep some.
No, one self-contained.
That is who I wanted,
One parent.
because I've spoken to Ms. Fowler as well, but like I
And
said,
then another parent.
I can't.
Miss Smith, good president, they say they need help in the free room.
That's Mr. Lee. It's never done.
I don't know.
Okay, so we're gonna have
Thank you,
one
ma'am.
resource class, one self-contained,
You will have 2
2
resources.
resources, but y'all gonna
Okay,
share a
okay.
pair.
upper and lower, just?
No, it's gonna be upper, because it's only 3rd through 5th.
Oh,
That's what you're
okay.
gonna say?
But what I'm saying is, because the enrollment is going to be comparable to what we have here, just a replacing of the kindergarten through 2nd with the 3rd through 5th graders, then we still gonna need 2, because you're gonna have too many kids to
Too many
service all
kids.
of them.
And now you won't have 25 children. You'll have like 12, which you could do much more. 15 or something like that. I think that's gonna be awesome. Now we can do, Ms. Smith, it was buffering, so it's messing up on us, but we were watching a video about aligning curriculum within and across grade level, so we already ahead of the game with vertical teaming. But, this guy was just talking about 5, he called them ins and outs. So we talked about ins and outs for SPED. 5 things that they can come in doing, but 5 things, but you gotta do this at the beginning of the year. 5 things they gonna leave you doing, and that's what you focus on. That's gonna be awesome. And it's gonna be directly aligned with your IEP goals and objectives. You just have to make sure when y'all write them, because I've seen some of those IEPs and that's kind of confusing for me sometimes.
Some people don't even put objectives.
Yeah, okay, that's what I mean by confusing,
You don't have
because
to,
sometimes, well, but then
do it
it's,
for the ones that's like going to summer school.
but then don't you think it would be great that you say by the end of the school year, that the child will be able to write a complete paragraph? You know, that would be better for y'all when Miss, what's her name? Miss Wesley comes in and says, well, what is IEP objective? Because that's all she talked about in our last meeting, was IEP objectives.
Well, if you don't write the IP, if you don't write objectives, then how will the next teacher know what they need to work on? That's
Well, and then how do you know what you're working towards? I mean, what's the end product?
That's what I be looking for. I be like, well, they don't have an objective.
Another thing too that, that we probably need to do with the parents, when those parents sit in those IEP meetings, y'all know just as well as I do, some of them are just sitting there and waiting for you to say sign here, sign there, so they can leave. But I think we need to make an assertive effort to say, okay, do you understand what we're saying? And just kind of break it, and just kind of break it down, because the majority of them gonna say, I understand. So maybe even repeating, but simplifying when you repeat. Okay, so this is what this means. When your child takes a test, we're going to do blah, 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 blah. And then if you see that that's not happening, then you can always contact the school so that we can make sure that it's happening. You know what I mean?
Well, and I totally agree with Ms. Smith, because the grade that they see, y'all, is usually the grade that they get, so they see that F. But y'all need to assure them that when they sit in that regular ed teacher class getting a grade, that's not work based upon their IEP and their level. That is on grade level work. What they do with me is based on their instructional level, where they are functioning at that time.
But that's why the teacher ought to combine those two
Wait,
grades.
have you
That's
guys
what I,
done one
that's what I
particular
do. So that's something we need to talk to Ms.
All
Smith.
right.
Said she done
This was being on mama to check him out, and he was just, in there fighting. So she wants to know, do she need to been taken, wait to see what you wanna do?
Well, a lot of the kids, they don't even know they're in special ed.
Exactly.
They don't know.
But then that's a good thing, Ms. Kennison, because you make them feel like that, and then, you know, it's not that stigma, because I know when I was in school, they didn't call it resource, they call it lab.
Yeah, reading
Math lab and reading lab. But when those children would come out to go to reading lab, they went to the buildings in the back, and it was like, but it was like, you knew that, oh, something wrong with them, why they can't stay in here for them? They go math lab. That's
So
what-
I always wanted to go, cause they come back with their little brown paper, and they have, you know, their little word.
When I was a child, I knew that was the low kids. Like you all, and then the only people that went in those buildings were the special ed kids and the low kids. So it's a good thing that when our children come out, they don't feel that stigma of special ed. But I think they need to understand that.
A lot of kids, they wanna come in my class.
They do.
I mean, they do.
What they're, and then look at what they're doing when they come in your class, so they're getting some instruction going on. But I just
So
think
what y'all think,
that.
I should go back to regular ed? That's very special ed, you do a good
I know
job.
Ms. Kennison saying, and especially it is not easy. I mean, it's a lot of work y'all have to do, and I commend y'all for doing it, because y'all have a lot of work.
Especially ed has a lot of, I mean, regular ed has a lot of work too.
Yeah, but special ed have more work, because not only are you taking on the role of a regular ed teacher,
Oh, yeah, with
I.
IEPs, yeah.
You gotta deal with all kinds of stuff. A lot of the parents don't even understand.
Like Ms.
you
Smith
know.
said, and I agree with Ms. Smith that explain that to those parents, but next year, it's gonna, I mean, y'all, we're gonna be a small school. So if you have 2 resource teachers, I mean, if we have 50 kids, well, I doubt if we even have 50 kids. If we have 20 kids in resource, you gonna have 10 and she's gonna have 10.
But I'm sure we're gonna have more.
Yeah, we're gonna have more, I'm certain. But, I mean, look at how good it's gonna be for you. So when those children come in your room, you won't ever have 7 and 8 kids at a time. Now, what we did talk about though, and I can share this with y'all, in our, RTI meeting, you know, the district has revamped RTI totally. If those teachers don't have data on those children, like, you know, success maker data and all that, they cannot and will not be considered for special ed. They will not be considered for services at all. And I'm looking for my binder. Oh, I left it in my car in my bag. But I was gonna pull out some of the information in that binder, because what it talks about is every child that's a tier 2 or tier 3 in RTI, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I have my binder, but not from when you went the other day.
Okay, yeah. All the children that are in tier 2 or tier 3, any child, they don't have to be special ed, they will have a lavender folder. And we track those children. There will be an RTI academic team that meets on those children, because if that child moves to tier 3 and doesn't show any growth for, I think it's 2 months, they will be referred for SPED. But they have to have every data point. You know, like right now when Ms. Guillory comes, they come to pull up Success Maker. The children didn't spend enough time in Success Maker, so she can't get them in. Now it's holding these classroom teachers responsible. Like, it has to be done.
Cause they have to go every day.
But they're not, because, no, they're not being properly monitored. So they're not getting on, they're getting on everything else, or they playing and they don't have sufficient time, and now the district is holding the classroom teachers' feet to the fire. Because if that parent says, I want my child looked at for special ed, and then they go and pull that data and they don't have it, that's the classroom teacher's fault. So, I mean, I think it's gonna be great. But they did say that no child is gonna be coming out of core subjects. So I think it's perfect now that we're gonna have 2 resource teachers with a smaller population of children, because y'all won't be able to pull them out of math and
They gonna have to
in
stay
LA
there the
anymore.
whole
They're
time?
gonna have to stand there the
Now,
entire
even when they
time.
do the little small group,
No ma'am, they don't want them coming out of their core instruction at all, and that's a good thing.
okay,
Because-
you don't have, I mean, some kids, they have so many minutes and you gotta try to
Well,
make
and
it-
you can pull them out at any other time except the core subject time. So for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, your core subject time is only ELA and math.
Right.
So you got the whole rest of the day to pull them out.
Oh, wait a minute now, little 5th grade told me she was getting pulled out like social
They
studies and stuff.
will
like
be
social-
pulled out of social studies and they will be pulled out
But
of
she said they
science.
didn't test it, they had that
Don't
on the
matter.
test and
Don't
stuff.
matter. It's the, well now, see, they taking that burden off of y'all and they putting it back on the classroom teacher, because she's gonna have to find a way to get that child where that child needs to be and to give them their grades.
You gonna have to explain this to these teachers.
Oh, yeah, we're gonna
in the
explain it to
beginning.
them.
I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
over and over.
They will know, but they cannot be pulled out of core subjects, so they are going to be forced to give these children accommodations and modifications in their regular EDA classroom. They're gonna have to.
And it can be
But
done.
they need to
Now,
understand that
once
they-
we talk about max minutes, that's totally different. Max minutes children will come out of core subjects.
Like Mercedes.
You know,
Well, yeah.
Yeah, but a
we'll
child
talk
with
about
max
child with
minutes
max
will
minutes.
come out of
What
core
about a
subjects.
child like with a mild, moderate disability,
If they have max minutes,
but they don't have max minutes?
well, you better work on getting it.
Well, it's mama. That's why I say, see, she doesn't, she wants him
See,
to stay in there
And I think what the parents need to understand is, stay in there for what?
and get exposed to the.
That's fine, they'll get exposed, but let's fill in the gap, so let them stay in for a little while, but mama, he's going to come out. Go ahead and get that child max minutes, and like you said, then we can let them,
I dropped the minutes.
and then we can let them stay in there for 30 minutes and you pull them out of ELA for 60. Then that'll work, for that exposure, like for the teacher before she starts her grouping. But it's a lot of, it's changing.
So how many 5th grade teachers we gonna have?
3, 4 3rd, 3 4th, 3 5th.
4 3rd grade teachers?
Mhm.
4?
4,
They got a lot of 3rd grade.
yes. Well, not that it's a lot. They're trying to keep the classroom sizes smaller. Now, I know Ms. Smith is working with Mr. Harding right now to get us an additional 4th and 5th grade teacher, because our projected enrollment in 5th grade and 4th grade for the 3 classes is between 24 and 25 students in a class. And they promised us in the school board meeting smaller class sizes, which is not 24 and 25. So she met with Mr. Harding this morning again, so he's going to find out. And she talked to Mr. Campbell about it. Where's our other teacher? Teachers.
Yeah. Yeah,
Do y'all have any other questions, concerns,
So,
comments?
y'all couldn't give each one of us a parent.
Ms. Kennison, I think you need to be,
What we
Rich,
gonna
I said
do?
over the one that.
you didn't have
I
any.
know, but we-
At least you have a half a person now.
Come on now, how we gonna do that schedule? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or whatever?
I have no clue.
I forgot how we did it with, John, yeah, with Ms. Jones.
That's yours.
Oh, okay.
And I'll get your ELA data for you as soon as I pull it up. Well, ladies, I thank y'all. This is officially our last PLC of the 2014-15 school year.
How can I do that?
Where the fried chicken at?
Huh? I
How?
don't do no good. Who we have to check to you?
Mhm.
Yeah.
You gotta go around and get,
I mean, I found the paper, but I'm gonna ask you something dirty, you have to do all these IEPs.
Take your time, Ms. Charles. Because none of y'all stuff is leaving, so if you have it to me by next Tuesday, that'll be
Okay.
perfect.
Cause,
Take your time.
I got two.
And Ms. Kennison, you do have another computer in here you need to add to your inventory. It's right over here by the door.
My computer?
Yeah, it came from the tech center.
just that bottom part?
Yeah, because the monitor's in your room.
So it's gonna be good to work?
It's ready. You actually take it on the way out and put it on your inventory.
Yeah,
So y'all, last
all right. See you.
All right, thank y'all for coming.
All right. You know, I had to bring my little machine back.
3 o'clock.
What machine?
I got another, my little laminate
What
machine.
happened? Man, I've been burning out my nose.
Cause I stuck something in it and it didn't come out. So I just went right on and got me another one. So Ms. McCarthy, like if you would have a good, in-service, you know, like you just not told us, you know.
Well, Ms.
talk
Smith
to
kinda
the
said it,
teachers
so
and stuff like that.
Clement and I will do that at the beginning of next year, to go ahead and tell them what kind of modification, what we did and what worked.
And get somebody from special ed to come and talk, you know. and stuff
Yeah,
like
because
that.
I agree with you, I think they need to understand what's expected of them.
Mhm.
Hold on now, Mr. Miss